As we come to Deuteronomy 10, Moses is recalling what happened after the golden calf at Mount Sinai. Yahweh was angry, of course, and said to Moses, "Leave me alone, and I will destroy them." So for 40 days and nights, Moses did the opposite. He didn't leave Yahweh alone. He lay on his face before the Lord, fasted and prayed until Yahweh finally said he wouldn't destroy them, and he agreed to renew the covenant. But the first set of tablets was broken, so now Moses keeps telling the story as we go to verse 1. "At that time Yahweh said to me, 'Cut 2 stone tablets like the first, and come up to me onto the mountain and make an ark of wood. I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke, and you shall put them in the ark.' So I made an ark of acacia wood and cut 2 stone tablets like the first, and went up onto the mountain, having the 2 tablets in my hand. He wrote on the tablets according to the first writing, the 10 commandments which Yahweh spoke to you on the mountain out of the middle of the fire in the day of the assembly, and Yahweh gave them to me. I turned and came down from the mountain and put the tablets in the ark which I had made, and there they are, as Yahweh commanded me." Comment. Verse 4, Yahweh wrote on the second set of tablets according to the first writing. That is, the same thing he wrote before. He didn't water down the message of what was good and right. Now here comes a 4-verse section that many translations place in parentheses because there's so much skipping forwards and backwards in time. Verse 6. "The children of Israel traveled from Beeroth Bene Jaakan to Mosera. There Aaron died, and there he was buried, and Eleazar his son ministered in the priest's office in his place." Comment. That was a forward skip of almost 40 years from Mount Sinai to Aaron's death at Mount Hor, as originally told in Numbers 20, verse 27. Here it says he died at Mosera, which must be adjacent to Mount Hor. Verse 7. "From there they traveled to Gudgodah, and from Gudgodah to Jotbathah, a land of brooks and water." Comment. Now coming up, the text returns us to something that happened at Mount Sinai, verse 8. "At that time Yahweh set apart the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of Yahweh's covenant, to stand before Yahweh to minister to him, and to bless in his name to this day. Therefore Levi has no portion nor inheritance with his brothers. Yahweh is his inheritance, according as Yahweh your God spoke to him." Comment. Levi will have no portion or inheritance with his brothers, which means they're not going to have a single unified territory to call their own. Instead, they'll get 48 cities scattered throughout Israel, with the adjoining pasture lands going out from the city walls about 6/10 of a mile, Numbers 48:7. And they'll get tithes from Israel as an inheritance, Numbers 18:24. A tenth of all in Israel belongs to Yahweh, so when the Levites receive the tithe, it's actually coming from Yahweh. Verse 9, Yahweh is Levi's inheritance. That's their real inheritance. The Levites are a picture or a foreshadowing of those of us whom Yahweh has called to himself. We belong to Yahweh, and he is our eternal inheritance, Hebrews 9:5. We're not here to make full use of the world, 1 Corinthians 7:3. We have no inheritance here. Now for some more events at Sinai that Moses is telling out of order, verse 10. "I stayed on the mountain as at the first time, 40 days and 40 nights, and Yahweh listened to me that time also. Yahweh would not destroy you. Yahweh said to me, 'Arise, take your journey before your people, and they shall go in and possess the land which I swore to their fathers to give to them.'" Comment. That was the command to leave Sinai after being there about 11 months. Now on to instructions for the future, verse 12. "Now Israel, what does Yahweh your God require of you but to fear Yahweh your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Yahweh your God with all your heart and with all your soul, to keep Yahweh's commandments and statutes which I command you today for your good." Comment. Moses makes it sound easy, but only Christ has ever done it to perfection. Verse 13, since all this is, quote, for your good, it seems we would do a lot better. Verse 14, "Behold, to Yahweh your God belongs heaven and the heaven of heavens, the earth with all that is therein." Comment. There's a lot of mention about other gods in the Old Testament, but Moses says, don't be mistaken. Yahweh owns heaven, the heaven of heavens, the earth, and all that is therein. There's nothing he doesn't own. The other gods are false fronts for demons, Deuteronomy 32:17. Would like a little elaboration about the heaven of heavens. There's obviously the heaven we can see, which is the sky and all the objects in it, and there's obviously the heaven which is the dwelling place of God. It's probably identical with what Paul called the third heaven and paradise, 2 Corinthians 12, verses 2 through 4. To complicate things, Paul mentioned a heaven in which spiritual forces of wickedness dwell. These forces can influence earthly events, Ephesians 6:12. Jacob dreamed about a ladder set up on the earth with angels going up and down on it, with Yahweh standing above it, Genesis 28, verses 12 and 13. So the heavens we can't see are interacting with the earth, both for evil and good, and we just get bits and pieces on the subject. Going on, though, Yahweh owns the invisible and visible worlds and must have a lot on his mind, verse 15. Only Yahweh had a delight in your fathers to love them, and he chose their offspring after them, even you above all peoples, as it is today. Comment. Though in one sense Yahweh focused like a laser beam on Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants, he's not partial. He told Abraham that day in Ur, quote, all the families of the earth will be blessed through you, Genesis 12:3. That's where all this is going. Israel's big task is ultimately to bring the Messiah to Israel and the other nations to fulfill the promise that all the families of the earth will be blessed through Abraham. This indicates Romans 2:11, there is no partiality with God. But, verse 15, he did choose Israel above all peoples to bring it about, quote, even you above all peoples, verse 16. Circumcise, therefore, the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked. Comment, that's the underlying meaning of circumcision. Our heart should be sensitive to God, and our will compliant with His. This is the second of at least 8 times Yahweh mentions circumcision of the heart in the Old Testament. Verse 17, for Yahweh your God, He is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, the mighty and the awesome, who doesn't respect persons, nor takes reward. He does execute justice for the fatherless and widow, and loves the foreigner in giving him food and clothing. Therefore love the foreigner, for you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. Comment, verse 18, he loves the foreigner. His love is not confined to Israel. Plus, he has a particularly soft spot for the helpless, widows and orphans. Verse 20, you shall fear Yahweh your God, you shall serve him, and you shall cling to him, and you shall swear by his name. He is your praise, and he is your God, who has done for you these great and awesome things which your eyes have seen. Comment, he is your praise. We should praise him, certainly, but this could be taken to mean the reverse, that the only praise that counts is the praise that comes from him. Again, it says, he is your praise. We want to hear Yahweh's praise. We want to hear him saying, well done, my good and faithful servant, Matthew 25:21. We praise him. We hope to hear him praise us. Verse 22. Your fathers went down into Egypt with 70 persons, and now Yahweh your God has made you as the stars of the sky for multitude. Comment, they truly can't be counted. The censuses they took were in round numbers. That's the chapter. Deuteronomy 11 is next at landofhavilah.net. Deuteronomy 11.